Good day. In the year 2010, I finally gave the fantasy genre the chance it deserved. Until that year, I just called fantasy ignorant science fiction and disparaged it as purple prose nonsense. But until that year, the only fantasy novels that I'd ever read were the Harry Potter novels, so I really didn't know what I was talking about. The games Dragon Age Origins and Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion started me on the path, and the fan-recommended Warhammer Fantasy series Gotrek and Felix completed my journey to liking the fantasy genre. Since 2010, I have learned that fantasy is every bit as valid as science fiction, and that there are numerous fantasy novels worth reading. One such novel is Magician. This novel was released in 1982 and is an example of classical fantasy. It features epic, all caps, deeds and mighty heroes. It is modeled on the type of fantasy seen in the legendary Lord of the Rings trilogy. However, unlike many books of the 70s and 80s, it does not ape Lord of the Rings, but rather tries and succeeds in creating a fairly unique plot. Keep in mind that there will be spoilers in the middle part of the review. Magician takes place in the totally not D&D land of Midkemia. It is a magical realm filled with idealized medieval humans, elves, dwarves, dark elves, and all the trash mobs you could ever want. The beginning of the novel follows the adventures of Pug, a keep boy in the land of Crydee, a quaint frontier barony that is part of the Kingdom of England. The Kingdom of the Kingdom. The novel opens with Pug getting caught out in the open during a massive storm. He gets attacked by a boar and almost killed, despite him putting up some resistance. He is saved by a character named Meacham and taken to a hut in the woods, where he meets Kulgan, a magician of some power. Kulgan gives Pug a crystal ball, and to his surprise, Pug can use it well. While in Kulgan's shack, Pug meets Kulgan's pet fire drake, Feritis, a recurring character that is quite endearing. Later, we are introduced to our second character of the novel, Thomas. He is another keep boy who wants to be a soldier. He is the opposite of Pug. Where Pug is shy and reserved, he is outgoing and boisterous. Despite having opposite personalities, Pug and Thomas are best friends, and the early chapters of the novel feature some light-hearted adventures. During the first part of the novel, we meet Duke Boric, the stoic but kind monarch, Arutha and Liam, and the Princess Coraline. The royal family will become major players as the novel continues. Eventually, Pug and Thomas's childhood comes to an end when they are given their apprenticeships. Pug is chosen by Kulgan due to his latent magical powers, and Thomas is chosen to be a soldier. At this point of the novel, it started dragging for me, since not much was happening. But if you're in the right mindset, you can really enjoy the outright idyllic nature of these opening chapters. And Pug and Thomas are entertaining enough to keep it going due to how endearing they are. We finally get some action when Pug is chosen by Duke Boric to be the princess's riding companion. Oh my! During their first ride together, they are attacked by two members of a trash mob, aka goblins. Pug uses a sling to try and attack one, but to no avail. And when all seems lost, he goes Super Saiyan and uses his magic and kills them both. Princess Caroline is rather appreciative, and the Duke gives Pug a plot of land for his trouble. The plot finally starts up when Pug and Thomas spot a strange ship about to sink. Upon investigating, they find that it is unlike anything they have ever seen before. They find a survivor, but he speaks a language that they cannot comprehend. Later, they bring in a cleric to perform a mind meld, and they learn that the survivor is a soldier of the Serani. And this is just the first part of the book. Raymond E. Feist puts at least 2 trilogies worth of novels into Magician. And right here is where the spoilers begin. The Serani are from another world entirely and reached Midkemia via a rift. Duke Boric fears an invasion and thus sets out to warn King Roderick in Rilan. To reach that location, they have to cross some perilous terrain, and along the way they get into a battle with some dark elves. The Duke and the main characters escape and eventually are rescued by the dwarves, and this is where 2 plot lines diverge. In order to speed up their passage through the Dwarven lands, they head into Moria. Random deep roads. You get the idea. And during their passage through the totally not deep roads, they face a spectral enemy, and in the ensuing fight, Thomas gets separated from the group. His plot has him finding an old dragon and getting some epic plus 100 to fighting skill Dragon Lord armor. This dragon scene is rather heart-wrenching and is a standout scene in the novel. Pug and company make it to Fantasy London only to find that the king is nuts and does not take the Tyranni seriously. Hilariously enough, however, the king gets word that the Tyranni have invaded, and immediately the king names Duke Boric supreme commander of the armies facing this off-world menace. In the U.S. publication, the novel was split into two parts, Magician Apprentice and Magician Master. Magician Apprentice ends with two major events. Pug gets captured on a scouting raid and taken to the Tyranni homeworld, and Cry D, under the command of Prince Arthura, fights off some Tyranni. Holy crap, ladies and gentlemen, this summary is only one tiny fraction of what happens in the first half of this novel. There are numerous characters and plot points, each serving a greater whole. The novel, despite having this many characters, never actually feels long-winded, and once you get past the opening Cry D stuff, the second half of the novel really picks up. As we are now talking about the second half of the novel, here be spoilers. Pug becomes a slave in the swamps of the Tyranni homeworld. The Tyranni are not nice people, but they are not evil either, and a Tyranni nobleman takes Pug from the swamp and half befriends him so that Pug can teach him about Midcamia. Pug's plotline also has him being taken by a Tyranni magician to be trained as a Tyranni mage. Thomas starts to become warped by the dragon armor and has to wrestle with the echoes of its original user, and Liam and Arthura become characters in their own right and go on some suitably epic adventures. And eventually, we even get an epic pirate character on top of all of that. According to the author's foreword for the version that I read, all he wanted to do was to create a rollicking good yarn, and by the great Telos he succeeded. All of the characters are suitably interesting, and hell, some even have cool names like Martin Longbow, with suitably cool backstories like how Martin was raised by the elves. The one word I would use to describe Magician is pleasant. The novel never gets cynical, nor does it ever get mean-spirited. It takes an idealized view of fantasy, but tempers it with some realism. If you want a rollicking good yarn, you can do no wrong with Magician. And so, I am General Lotz, wishing you good Crystal Shard and good Grey Knight, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this awesome content.